Welcome everyone to Wednesday's Live. So you can hear me, I think I'll turn off the fan. You might be able to hear it a little better now without that fan running. So today I wanted to tackle this beautiful little scene in Saint-Léonard. On the cusp of Normandy and Brittany. We're still in Normandy here, but beautiful, beautiful floral. One of the things I was so struck with there in France is just how well flowers grow and how much they use them. Just to show you some others, this is just some close-up of the roses. There's something about that particular climate and area that just everything seems to grow there. I mean, it wasn't just flowers. There were artichokes. There were desert-like plants. There were figs. There were everything. My goodness, these things here, they were just so beautiful. The buds here are almost the size of a lime. It's just gorgeous. And the countryside there. This is the view from my new artist friend Patrick Henry. This is his backyard. This is what he has to paint. It's just stunningly beautiful. And then this is the garden of Noël Brechier. Her trellises and her roses and the gardens in her front yard were absolutely stunning. Everything just goes crazy there, and just seems to love the summer. So I'm going to do a couple of things differently today, because this is, in a sense, a very conventional watercolor. But since we have people tuning in who are non-English speakers, I thought I would give a little bit of a tour of the studio and show things so that you know how I work, so I don't have to explain it. So here's the palette. Below that, the 2 jars of water and a sponge to blot the brush. The board is at a 45-degree angle almost. So you can see that's important for the paper. Over here I have a selection of brushes, sketches. There's going to be some Venice scenes coming up that I'm going to be doing. And this is how I talk to you. So, back to what we're doing here. There we go. So composition is probably the most important part of making a painting. And the thing to consider about composition is, well, what is the painting about? In this instance, it's going to be these roses on this beautiful little street in this beautiful little town. And since that's it, we want to allow the roses to occupy most of the area in the painting. So whereas our horizon line is almost here, is almost in the middle, what am I going to include? What am I not going to include? I'm probably not going to put these cars in here. They're a little too close to the edge and don't really contribute. I might put this car in, but mainly it's about this lovely floral things and the street. So the house, the buildings, they come to. I'm going to draw loosely because I wish to adjust as I go. There's a shed. I'm going to show a little bit more of the front of these so it doesn't look just like a rectangle. Now we have a gutter here. I don't think we have enough of that to really explain what it is. So, hi Judy. Since we don't have enough to show what it is, I think I'll just put another big white rose there. Why not? Probably is like that right now. Who knows? Hold your pencil to the angle. Put it in your, make it appear to you. Not appear to you. If you do this, it's muscle memory after a fashion. There's other lovely little, I used to like to get up in the morning and go down and walk in Saint Leonard and just see these beautiful, beautiful things. I like the fact that the road pitches a little bit towards all this. So you can see I've drawn it a little bit too high. So I need to come down. So if you walked down this road, we were staying a little bit further this way. If you walked down this road and then went down here, you went down to the Bay of Mont Saint-Michel and you could see it in the morning, and it was absolutely glorious with the morning light on it. And I'm going to take advantage of these shadow shapes. I like these shadow shapes. They're kind of compositionally, they're sort of a, what, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of when they cast sculptures in bronze. This would be like a sprue where you pour the hot molten metal in, and this is the actual sculpture. But I'm going to, compositionally, I'm going to treat it like that. So I'm noticing when we draw, we want to draw in relation one thing to another. How does this relate to that? They're almost at the same height, so I need to draw that. There's another set of chimneys there. We don't need to draw things to death. We just need to draw them so that we can use them. Now, how these flowers spill onto the road is very important. So there are a series of buildings coming out of here. Now, I've got my proportions just about right, so I can erase the lines that are not good. Always draw the correct line and then erase the bad line. And these are free shapes down here. You don't have to put them all in. Do they help? Are they adding to the composition? So there's the correct line. Take out the incorrect line. Watch your intervals. And by intervals, I mean the widths of things, where they appear. Don't have regular intervals. This interval needs to be longer than another interval. So I got that. Now I have this. And the other thing that I like about this as a composition is the fact that we have the organic shapes, irregular shapes, versus the geometric man-made shapes. Natural, man-made. And it's just a very lovely pairing. But you want to have more of one than the other. So I'm back in this vicinity now. And I may put a little bit of that car in there. That says human habitation. We'll see. It might stay, it might go. Okay. Hello, Carol. Carol's been to Normandy and she knows how pretty it is. Okay, now I really shouldn't draw my shadows. I should paint them, but sometimes it's good to know where they're going to go. So, it's a small thing, but I'm going to mention it. The fact that this line pitches down like that is compositionally important, because a line, your eye, you hear the phrase, if people see a line, they get in it. And there's something to that. But compositionally, if we see a line, our eye will follow it. So if you have a horizontal line, be careful, because it might lead your eye out of the painting. And we don't want that to happen, do we? We want the viewer to stay in the picture that we're trying to provide them with. So if that line pitches down, we will have a tendency to come into the center of the painting, which is a good thing. Now I have to remind myself where the clumps of flowers are going to be. If I overdo it, I'm going to put an X to remind me to leave it white. If I overdo it, I can always paint in with some more green, which is darker. And eliminate any excess floral arrangements. Now I have some pinks, and I have some yellows, and I have some whites. And oh my gosh, it was so pretty. And here comes these beautiful sidewalks that they have. So I have to remember where I want pink, where I want white, and then I'll make some green if I put in too much. So there's our composition. I'm going to take out any extraneous lines that I don't want. I may or I may not put in that street light. We'll see. Since it's a dark on a light surface, I have the option. I'm in good shape there. Now here, I notice this comes out and breaks on that. I think that's a good thing. If you can get a foreground thing to overlap a background thing, you cannot help but create some space. So that's good. And I'm going to do it. Yeah. I don't know what this is, but it's a vertical or it's a horizontal, or it's a slant. So we just take advantage of those things. Or it's an organic shape, a free shape. Now, okay. Oops, John, I want to copy that. Let's talk about the atmosphere. It's a bright morning, so the contrasts are going to be rather sharp, as opposed to if it was an overcast day and moody, it would probably, the values would be closer together and softer. So this shadow tips like that. I'm going to tip it like that. Because again, it will send the viewer back into my composition, and that's what I want. I don't want them looking at the next fellow's picture. So, done with the drawing. Let's go to the painting. Now, today I'm going to use a slightly different color. I've talked about it before, but to get this lovely pink, it's very hard to get that out of my usual alizarin or quinacridone rose. So I'm going to use a color which is considered not exactly light fast. It's Sennelier Opera Rose, and you can see it's that very lovely floral pink. My usual color, the M. Graham quinacridone rose, is not. It's a little too dull and a little too dark, and then my usual alizarin is a little too dark and a little too earthy. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. What can you do? So it's a something called BV19, which is not actually a pigment, plus a pigment 81-1, where this is the usual violet 19, which has many, many, many shades. So we're going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those light colors, in before I put any of these other dark colors on. We're going to work the standard light to dark. So here we go with this crazy floral pink. If you're going to paint a lot of florals, you pretty much need to use this color because nothing quite looks like it. And I would just suggest that you don't hang the painting in strong light. So I'm putting it in the general area of where it is, and maybe a little beyond, because I have dark greens that will go around it. Rinsing that, I'm going to go to a yellow. I got two yellows. I've got a lemony yellow and I've got a more orange biased yellow. And I'm going to put them in this vicinity. Again, a little bit beyond where I might be seeing them, because I can always paint around them with the greens. Now, anything that's I've got an X on is going to stay white. And my next light color, I'm going to say, is this sort of Naples Jaune Brilliant. I'm using Sennelier Naples Yellow. I'm going to hit, because that's darker, I'm going to paint right through that. And if these things begin to blend with each other, I don't care, because the darker color is going to go over. Now I'm going to put a little bit of raw umber in that. Oh, let's put some burnt umber in that to get a sort of nondescript brown color for that light color back there for the road. It looks dark now, but it's going to be light later, after I put the darks in. On the road, I need to have a kind of grayish color, so I'm going to go with my ultramarine blue and my burnt umber, and I'm going to mix them back and forth till I get something that is like the gray that I see here. It's a little more blue than brown. So here comes that. And again, I'm putting it beyond where it might go, because there are darks that are coming over top, the shadows. Now the sidewalk is kind of a little bit lighter, but a little bit warmer. So I'm putting in more of the brown component, or maybe even some burnt sienna. And we may need to go darker on these later. We will see. What about our building here? I'm squinting at it, and is it darker than the sky? Parts of it are, but I'm looking at the mortar, the stuff in between here. It's lighter. Beautiful stonework in these buildings in that part of France. So I'm going to put that in. Same stuff, burnt umber, ultramarine blue. I don't care if I hit the roof, because that's all going to be darker, right? Down here, I've got this lovely terracotta color. So I'm going to go into my burnt sienna. I'm going to go into my orangey red. Maybe some more burnt umber. If it's too vibrant, I will put a little bit of ultramarine blue in it. And I'm going to just be careful. It looks a little bit too vibrant, so a little bit more blue. I'm going to be careful to paint around where I'm going to have flowers. And there will be other colors in this, and maybe we'll put them in right now. So there's some variation in that. let's blot the brush. And then get into the blues, the ultramarine and cobalt. I'm just going to get right into the ultramarine. And I'm going to touch in while it's wet. Now, because these two paint consistencies are about the same, they're both runny paint, they're going to blend into each other. And let's get a combination. See, this is thicker paint, so it's going to spread out more. Well, not spread out more. I take that back. It's going to spread, but it's not going to spread far beyond where I put it. Okay. So while that's working, I'm going to put a little bit under the ridge vent. I'm going to think about the sky. In a painting like this, it is very, very important to get the value relationship between the sky, the earth, which is receiving the light from the sky, and the things that are sticking vertically up out of the earth. One of them will be dark. You can see it here. You can see it there. One of them will be light and one of them will be medium. The light is coming in at a bit of an angle, so things will be illuminated, but I am looking at the sky and I'm comparing it to where the light is hitting the ground, and when I squint, I'm saying, that looks a little darker than that. So my blue has to be darker than this. So now I need to mix up a blue. And I need to mix up, I need some place to do it, right? So I'm gonna wipe out a spot to do it. I'm gonna need a bigger brush. And this is a very clean blue. So I'm going to start with cobalt, which I haven't used much. Maybe a little bit of ultramarine. And I'm debating whether I should put some white in it to get a kind of solid. I want a big puddle because I need to cover a lot of territory. But I also need to get lighter as I go down. I don't think I'm going to use the clouds. The reason I'm not going to use the clouds is because they are white or near white, and they're about the same size as the flowers, and they're about the same shape as the flowers. So compositionally, it's important that you don't create some competition for the real subject by putting something else in there that's similar in a different place. So I am going to eliminate those clouds. I'm going to give us a clear sky so that I can feature these beautiful roses. I am going to put a little bit of white in this. That will give it some body, and it will also give it something of that character. So white, cobalt. It's a runny mix. If I tip this, it's going to run into my reds. So I need to make a lot of it to make sure that I don't run out midway. And then I will probably put a little more white into it and a little more, maybe some of my quinacridone rose, or maybe even some of this opera rose, so that I don't. Now see, that's just not dark enough. So quickly, John. I may have to turn this upside down. Put some white in it. I'm making a bead. It's runny paint. Don't starve my bead out. The bead waits for me while I paint this shape. So add some white, add some water, catch the bead, come down. If I run over my chimneys, I'm not too worried because they're darker. So the important thing is not to starve my bead out. More white, more water, getting lighter. See, I just hit my chimney, but that's okay. It's going to be darker. Now, I'm going to rinse quickly. I've got a bead to wait for me. You can't see it as well because I'm going to put in some of this Naples yellow because it's a little greener. And then a little more white, a little bit of some pink quinacridone rose, a little more white. Try and get the character of that sky on that particular morning. I don't matter if I hit the trees because they're darker, right? So we can always look for those places where you can breathe easily when you're trying to do this. Now we need to, oh, look at that. I think I'm going to live with that. I am going to live with, John, you shouldn't do that. Shouldn't do that, John. Now you have to wet the whole thing. Spray it. What was I thinking? You have to wet the whole thing so that the water carries the pigment down nicely. If you try to put a runny mix back into something where the water has already soaked in, you're going to be sorry. And the reason I did this is because there was a little shark tooth thing coming out of there. Oh boy. I think we're safe. But the important thing there, yeah, whoa, look at this. There's a problem area right up there. Get that blue, get that away. You have to get the paint from the top so that the water can go downhill and carry the pigment in an even fashion. Because if I try to stroke it and blend it with the brush or pressure, I'm going to get terrible white spots. So now I have to do this. Cover your ears. Hopefully that is the last of that kind of noise. All right. Now, we're moving towards our medium colors. So, probably not going to need any more blue. I might need a dark blue. Uh-oh, what did I do?
Here are a few things you can try.
Accidentally.
I found...
Come back. There we go. To prevent that from happening again, we're going to do this. The power button up here, if I press it down, it has a tendency to call up that girl. And we don't want that. So now we're going to go into our medium colors, which is where I was at. Okay, different brush. It's large, but it doesn't hold as much pigment. So I need to have some, let's see, greens that are not the darkest greens, but the medium greens. So I'm going to get down here in this mess. And the lighter greens strike me as being yellowish. So I'm going to make quite a bit of that. And my two components will be either Prussian or indigo and the nickel azo yellow, possibly a little bit of yellow ochre. What I'm looking for is kind of this color versus that green. I've got dark greens, medium greens, and light greens. And I need to not go too dark to start with and not go too vivid to start with. So I think I've got enough of what I need here. Now there are going to be places in here where it's going to get a little darker, so I'm going to modify this green as I go so that it's not the same everywhere. I'm going to be very careful to leave behind some little white specks that will possibly become white roses. I may need them to be that. I'm going to put a little bit more blue, the darker blues, into these areas down here. And I'm just going to get right into my dark blues, which would be either the Prussian or the indigo, in the vicinity of where I'm seeing darks, which is a lot of it down here. Now those dark spots, be careful with them, because there are going to be more of them towards the front, and they're going to be larger towards the front. They're big, medium, small. And they get lighter as they go back. So I'm putting a little bit more water and a little bit more of the yellow component. And because these two colors are about the same consistency, they're going to meld very nicely. I'm in this area now, so I have to look at, these lines tend to go like that. To get the character of that blossom. I may come back and get a little darker here and there, but for the moment, you see how they're getting smaller? These are big shapes, small shapes. There may be some darks that need to come back later, but right now I'm squinting and I'm looking for big shape areas. Hi, Brent. Now, the character of the green is changing as we go from the foreground to the background. You notice how it's getting, of course, a little darker, but it's also getting a little bluer. Now, I'm going to put some turquoise, cobalt turquoise into that green. Goodness, it's taken over my cerulean. It's a very runny color. So you have to be careful with it. So I'm putting a bit of cobalt turquoise and a bit of cobalt blue. And that looks a little too blue, so I'm going to make it a little bit more earthy with some raw umber. And a bit of water. I don't want to get too dark too soon. So back here, I'm in this area now. Some small things up there. I need to be a little more earthy. This is not the darkest green that will appear here. There are going to be darker greens. Now this one, it does get bluer. Let's get a little bit grayer too. So I'm putting in some lavender. When you're painting things like this, you have to be very careful that, particularly when you're on location, that you don't look right at the thing by itself. And I talk about this all the time. I'm going to make just almost a green that is almost blue. When you're looking at greens, look at the greens in the front along with the greens in the back so you can see the difference. Are they darker? Are they lighter? Are they bluer? Are they yellower? Anything can happen in nature. In this instance, we're seeing the classic bluer, less vibrant as they go back. But if you look at this all by itself, you will see the same greens that you see right there because your eye is going to adjust for the distance and the illumination because your eye is way better than it needs to be. It's too good. There's going to be some real darks that need to come in here. But they're not going to come in just yet. Not just yet. Maybe about now. It's going to, we're at the holy mess stage. It's going to look terrible until we put in our final darks and colors. So now we need to get into some dark blue greens. Prussian blue, indigo, yellow ochre, but more of the blue components, maybe even a little bit of the red component to get a purplish color. See, that's not quite dark enough. I'm doing this now because the surface is I just painted it. And that allows me to put this in and have it melt into the color that I put down previously. The idea being that I want a soft edge because it's not something close to me. And I don't want something as distinct as what I'm going to have here. This needs to be softer. And again, if you look into this area by itself, you will see the same kind of thing that you see here because your eye adjusts for that distance and illumination. And we have to guard against that. It's a very hard habit to break. Because the reason being is that it seems counterintuitive to not look at something when we're trying to paint it. You have to look at it, right? So I'm also going to put a little bit of cobalt turquoise in it to make it bluer. The purple-ish dark, Prussian indigo, any dark blue will do. So get some of that in here. Well, darker still in spots. Okay, now we have some shadows coming across the street out of the foliage. Oh, thank you, Carol. We'll see. We'll see. I can still screw it up. So I need a bluish grayish color. I'm going to use a little bit of umber and some ultramarine and mix it into the blues that I've been using. Maybe a little bit of red in it, who knows. And I'm going to come out of all this down here, and I'm going to run my shadows across. So the shadows will appear, I hope, we'll see, to come out of, and this is the fun thing, is you can suggest all manner of stuff on the other side of the road without actually having to paint it. So I want the shadow to get a little bit lighter and redder as I come forward. I can see now I'm going to need to glaze that road a little bit darker. Not much, just a little bit. So there are houses and stuff on this side of the street. Again, I'm tipping this shadow this way. I'm going to put more brown in it because it's crossing onto a different surface. So it should not be the same color. Took me years to figure that out. Okay, I'm going to live with that, but I might just spritz it with this to soften that edge. I'm going to blot the brush. I'm going to pull it along there so that that edge is a bit softer. It's closer to us. Now, let's deal with up here. Do we have any related colors? There's some bluish aluminum sort of colors on the flashing on this roof edge. Quick stroke. I'm going to put some burnt umber into that. Burnt umber and cobalt, burnt umber and ultramarine to get a blue-gray, dark blue-gray for that building back there. Let's see. Oop, lost my car. Well, we're not going to have a car today, are we? While this is damp, I'm going to touch underneath it to create the eave shadow. Let's put a little more burnt umber into that. And a little bit of water to make sure this is dry, and it is dry. Execute our chimneys. Now I'm going to make the chimney back here more or less a solid color. I'll have to finesse that later. This one, I'm going to make a little bit more of the stonework. So some burnt sienna in that to make it a little bit. I'm not going to get those bands. I'm going to get the brush somewhat dry. I'm going to squeeze some of the water off. And for starters, I'm going to pull across here, trying to leave a bit of the original color behind. Now I'm going to go down to this roof here, and that's going to be back to our blues and umbers because it's pretty dark. You can see why I like this oriental brush. It goes into a flat shape. Merci, Noel. Noel lives just a few miles from here in one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. So we're going to start making this happen. This roof, these slates need to be, well, this needs to be darker. And there's a dark roof here. This roof needs to be dark, dull brown. So blues and umbers. Raw umber, burnt umber, any blue. Cobalt, ultramarine, doesn't matter. Quick stroke, if I can do it. Same thing other side. Gonna let that dry. While I'm waiting for those areas to dry nicely, I'm going to get some ultramarine, dirty ultramarine blue or cobalt, The shadow underneath here. Too dark. A little bit more water. Same on that. Same on that. Same on that. Okay. What do I need? This needs to be darker. Take advantage of the texture of the paper. Very soft touch. This is 140-pound cold press Saunders. Leave a little bit of the old color behind, touching in some runny paint. To get the variation I want. Same thing here. While this dries, I'm going to work down here. Still damp. I can't work there yet. I need some rich, dark greens. My darkest blue is Prussian blue. My darkest yellow is this Nicolazzo yellow. And I need to make this a little more red. Isn't it funny how you put some red into green and it appears to get darker? I don't know why that is. So, looking at these shapes, a little more of the blue, a little more of the red. I'm squinting and I want to see what is the shape. They're irregular shapes, organic shapes. And we will begin to see out of this, I hope, mess. Jackie, well, thank you, Jackie. That's very kind. We're going to cover all this stuff. We're going to cover the non-negotiables. I should mention now, the next couple weeks, we won't be having a live because I'm going to Dubuque to teach a workshop with some wonderful painters, people who are already good. So I'm going to have to be on my A game. And we're going to cover the non-negotiables of watercolor, the things that you cannot avoid, the things that make watercolor work. So back to these green patterns, I'm trying to create a sense of, I want it a little more earthy here, a little darker over somewhere else. The wonderful thing about watercolor, and this applies to all mediums really, there are a few things that apply to every medium as far as composition and use of color and that sort of thing. But there are some non-negotiable aspects of watercolor that tend to escape us if we're used to painting the usual stuff. I mean, the usual way with an opaque medium like acrylic or oil or you have to think a little bit differently with watercolor. And it's sometimes not exactly intuitive. Sometimes it seems counterintuitive. So we have to learn those things, and then once you've got them in your head, off you go. So now if these shapes are getting too sharp, I'll apply water. And what does that do? This is one of the things we're going to talk about next week. If the pigment can swim, it will move, and the edge will become softer. Another way to soften an edge is just hit the thing with your hand and make it go away. I need a soft green, cool green, so I'm adding some Naples yellow, Sennelier Naples yellow. Okay, let's dry this and make our final marks. So cover your ears. Okay, I'm going to get a smaller brush because that will be more appropriate. Stiffer brush. And I'm going to get into, well, I'm going to get some, I'm going to need to wipe, I'm going to need to make space. So, my pinks, a darker shade of the pink to give the flowers a bit more dimension. Whatever they were. Same thing with the yellows. Maybe some yellow ochre and some medium yellow. What I may do right now, because it's dry, I'm going to erase the X's in the whites. So they look like flowers and not alphabets. And then we're going to start putting in these small dark marks or medium value marks that make the thing occur for us. So I need some lavender, which functions as a, you squeeze it out of the tube, it looks like lavender, but it functions as a gray, as does titanium white. It is not white. It is not as white as the paper. It is a very, very, very light gray. So I'm mixing just this very light pinkish gray, and I'm going to use that for the insides of some of these roses. And you will not see that everywhere because the roses are in different orientations, and sometimes there's a bit of yellow in these. We're not right up on them. We can't see them. We're not going to be able to make as if we were painting this. We're painting that. It's a certain distance from us, so we have to allow for that. And we have to determine how much detail is the right amount of detail for something that size. So these are pale colors which I am going to apply to that. Now there's going to be some glazing and some strong dark marks here and there. Let's start with that terracotta roof. Burnt umber. Well, raw umber, shoot. Raw umber and ultramarine blue. It's close to us, so I'm going to put in some of the lines for the shingles. I'm not going to make them all straight and continuous. I need them to be broken. The line has, the character of the line cannot be perfect. It needs to be irregular. And then get a little green in that to, with the side of the brush, to perhaps indicate the moss or lichen or whatever it is that's growing on that. Now there's a grayish bluish ridge vent on that. There we go. Now I need to get some of that burnt umber or raw umber and start doing some of these stones in a similar fashion. Don't paint them all. Paint the squint and paint the ones that appear to you. And when I say squint, what I mean is that you close your eyes, one eye altogether, and close the other eye halfway, and what you see left over is what you need to paint, usually. I'm going to put some ultramarine blue in that to get a neutral dark to render the front edge of that chimneys. Now let's get a ultramarine blue, raw umber, or ultramarine blue. We need a slow moving paint that looks like the shadows under the whatever it is. It's not an eave quite. Some sort of vents. What else? That needs to be thinner and darker. That needs to be not quite the same color as that. Same here, same here. So we're taking them down. Let's make them, for fun, colors we like. I can throw in some reds here for extra fun. And now let's glaze this to the correct color. I'm looking at that and I'm thinking a little bit more brown and a lot more water and a little bit of this green might give me the color I'm looking for. Right through the shadow because the shadow is that color. Now, more brown, but this time an orangier brown, more orange brown. And for the sidewalk. That looks so much better. And I'm thinking I even need to pull a little of that in here. Because the mortar is too light. Okay, I like that better. And I need to make that roof darker. So I'm adjusting my values by glazing. Glazing is when you take, and I'm going to need to let that dry, aren't I? Glazing is when you put a runny color over an already dry other color, usually to darken its value. So while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to get that pointy brush. I'm going to get my deep purplish darks. Okay, I think I'm almost there. Just a few more marks and we may have it. Just about there, just about there. Right under here maybe. Let your eye be the guide. Keep them smaller as they go back, larger in the front. Lighter as they go back. Okay, I think I'm almost there. Let's peel it. See what we get. But today we were mainly talking about composition, which the important thing to remember there is that things should not be the same size front to back, meaning the things in the foreground and the things in the background should not be similar in size. They should not be similar in shape character. That's why I didn't put the clouds in, because they're too similar in color and shape to the flowers and size. And make sure that the character of the shapes is a little bit different. You've got some organic shapes and some geometric shapes. So now that I look at it, I can see that there could be a little bit of irregular stuff coming out of here in the foreground on the sidewalk. Don't do that everywhere. Do it close to you. The relative spacing of things is important. This area I feel like was too much of the same green, so I'm going to put some medium green in there to transition from the darker greens to the lighter greens, and so on. I do think I'm going to look at it for a while, and I do think I'm probably going to put in the light poles, maybe even the antenna but we'll see. So, but when you get to a certain point, you want to not jump in there and do things too readily. You want to make sure you're considering it before you do it. I do see I need to come in and make a little better. When that's dry, I'm going to need to sharpen this line up. I'm not going to put in the weird shadow of the light pole, particularly if I don't put the light pole in. I think it's nice to break that shape up. I need to delineate part of this a little better. Okay, and too bad I lost my car. That might have been neat. But hopefully I'm getting across the idea here is that don't look at things by themselves. Look at things together, and particularly look at things that are in the foreground and compare them to things in the background, because you want them to look like they do in that lighting and how they recede in space, how they appear in distances. Yeah, that was a little too I might change the character of this pale yellow on one of that. 1, 2, 3, and they're the same. So I'm going to make this one a little darker, so they're not the same. I could still throw in a few darks, but I don't want to get too crazy with that. Yes, that needs some work there, but I have to wait. So, thank you all for tuning in. Remember that for the next couple weeks, I'm not going to have a live because I will be doing workshops out of town, and I will post pictures of what we do and where we're at. We're going to a very beautiful place in northeast Iowa, Dubuque, and then also down in Van Buren County. So stay tuned for that. I'll post pictures. We just won't have a live. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in, especially my overseas friends. And everybody stay safe, stay sane, and peace out.